Welcome back to Hashtag Single with Jeanette Bonner. I am not a relationship expert or sex therapist. I'm just a regular New York City woman navigating the world as a single, independent feminist. Hashtag Single is about having honest conversations with other singles in today's device-obsessed culture. So I hope you'll join me on this interesting, challenging, and complex journey as we navigate the ins and outs of singledom. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to Hashtag Single. I can't believe I'm saying that. And the welcome back is both for you and for me. You may or may not have been playing along. And if this is like your intro episode to Hashtag Single, you can skip the next part. But if you are an avid listener and you have been listening to Hashtag Single for a while, you may have noticed that there's been sort of a large absence. I'm laughing because it's beyond a large absence. I haven't published an episode since October of 2022. It's currently November of 2023. So it's been a minute. Actually, it's been thousands of minutes, which you may or not have noticed, depending on the year that you have had. But firstly, I just want to thank you greatly for coming back to the podcast, deciding to give this episode a listen after such a long hiatus. It truly, truly means a lot to me. And as I kind of teased on Instagram, this episode, well, we're not just back to our regular shenanigans after such a long time. A lot has happened in my life particularly, and I'm here to sort of talk about that and also explain what the future holds for Hashtag Single. So first up, I have someone with me today, and I want to introduce her to you. But before I do, a little backstory. As I said, and as we're going to get more into, I haven't published an episode in over a year, not because I haven't had episodes recorded, but because of other factors. The long and short of it is that I kind of hit a wall. Not quite sure if it was a creative wall, but it sort of felt like a writer's block where you just like cannot figure out how to move forward with your own project, and all of the motivation and ideas and excitement that you had when you first started or when you were writing the thing is completely fallen away, and you're just stuck there in your pajamas on a Tuesday at midnight staring at a blank page. But at the end of the day, I'm an actor, I'm an artist, I'm a creative person. I'm also a producer, which means I'm a bit of a problem solver. And it occurred to me that when I get stuck, it is time to look towards my community for help. So I decided that what I needed was someone who could help me get unstuck, to motivate me to talk things through, but mostly help me get these final episodes out to you. So I brought on a co-producer. I'm so excited that she's here with me today. Emma, thank you for joining me on Hashtag Single and specifically for joining me on this episode.
Of course. I am thrilled to be here. I'm really excited to be on this journey with you.
So tell everyone who you are, what you do, what your favorite ice cream flavor is, and of course, what your dating status is.
So my name is Emma. I am a podcast producer, mostly comedy podcasts, but also kind of like culture. I've done branded stuff. I've worked at indie comedy networks, kind of all over the place. And my favorite ice cream flavor. Am I missing a question in between?
Oh, you got this.
That was the one that really stuck out to me. Sleeper hit butter pecan.
Oh,
I know. It's not one you're
the
hearing
old
so
school.
often.
Yeah. I love that you called it a
Yeah.
sleeper hit. Yeah. Love it. Love the Haagen-Dazs OG. Yes.
And my dating status, which I guess actually, Jeanette, we haven't even talked about, but I went through like a very long-term relationship breakup at the beginning of this year after being with my girlfriend for 5 years, and am now dating someone.
Okay. Well, first of all, we hate you for being brought back to the single pool and then, immediately out of it again. I was going to be like, welcome. I talk about this on the podcast a lot. I had a life-defining long-term relationship, 5.5 years as well, in my 20s. And I can't not acknowledge that he helped me find who I was, but also helped me find who I was through his absence, in that, I discovered what I wanted and what I needed, and it wasn't through him. And I came into my own because of that singledom, obviously, hence the podcast, right?
Yeah.
So, I acknowledge how fucking difficult it is to have that, to lose that, and then try to find yourself again afterwards and your, like, independence and who you are. Like, we talk about that on the podcast a lot. Losing your sense of self and losing your kind of North Star when you're with someone whose priorities matter, but then you have to, like, reprioritize yourself, you know?
Totally.
It's a beautiful speech for someone who's single and you're not. So,
Fair enough.
that's so interesting, and I think that really wraps up into this larger conversation that we're gonna get into. So, this episode is obviously already a bit of a departure from any of our previous episodes. One, because I've brought on another producer, but also because, well, the truth of it is I've spent many of these past 12 months thinking about how to come back to hashtag single in a genuine and authentic way. And I finally decided it was best if I'm totally honest with you about what my year has been, what it's looked like. Here on hashtag single, I've always valued openness and honesty, especially and specifically around our personal lives and our single lives. And I do that in order to perhaps encourage or give permission to other single women who may be struggling with these topics in their dating lives to give voice to what they're feeling or experiencing unapologetically. And my hope is that together, if we can all learn to collectively use this language to own being single as something positive and empowering, or barring that, just simply like a fact that is as normal as stating where you live or what you do for a living or what kind of ice cream you like, then perhaps we can change how we as a society approach and talk about and to single women. So, all that being said, because we're going to cover some topics that are deeply personal to me, Emma is actually going to lead this conversation. And we are going to talk through some things that happened this year that affected both this podcast and my dating life, including losing my father to cancer in May. So, without further ado, let's dive in.
All
Floor is yours,
right.
Emma.
Okay. Well, so I know some of this, but I'm also excited. I feel like I'm going to learn a lot
Oh, I think
during
you will.
during this interview.
Are you actually
Um,
ready? You're not. Okay.
what I would love to start with is just hearing kind of like how your year began, intentions for the podcast, but also just like where you were at in life, because I know there's been a lot of like growth and change for you. So if
Yeah.
we go back to like a year ago, kind of
January.
almost.
January
Yeah.
seems like it was 20 years ago. Yeah, so obviously I said October, not December was the last episode, and the only reason that I didn't publish anything in the latter half of 2022 is because I got super busy with work as with happens. Um, God forbid. No, very blessed. As I mentioned, I'm a producer, so I produced 2 short films. I produced an educational docuseries in November, and then I was brought on to production manage a commercial in December. And so I just did not, everyone who listens to the podcast know this is like a one-woman band. I don't have anyone who works on the podcast with me, and I just didn't have the bandwidth to find guests, record episodes, et cetera, et cetera. So January comes around, resolutions is always a little slow time, especially in New York, gray skies, all that stuff. And I'm like, all right, what are we doing? All intents and purposes, I had a big strategy and I was like, you know what? I want to start this year differently. Someone had sent me a link to a course at Yale called The Science of Wellbeing. This course is being offered for free to everyone in the world. Formerly, it was only offered to college students at Yale. And it is Yale's number one class. It sells out or it books up, however you do that in college, like immediately. Like the minute registration is open, it's full within 5 minutes. I mean, groundbreaking numbers. And this has become very mentioned and talked about because why is everyone in college concerned about learning how to be happy? Like what's happening to our younger generation that they don't know what happiness is or they don't know how to regulate happiness for themselves. So I took this course because, again, January, and I was really struck by an episode that talked about how we as a culture set up these goalposts for ourselves about what we think will give us and achieve happiness for ourselves. And a lot of them are like, good job, high salary, graduate from college. And of course, as you can probably predict, one of them is like getting married. And there were studies, of course, this is a scientist after all, and she measures happiness between people who were like before they were married and then after they were married. And it turns out after 2 years of marriage, the level of happiness balances back out again. And I was like, this blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, why are we not talking about this? Like, I'm a whole believer that like I'm not sure that the institution of marriage is really something that women should be socialized to want. We talk about that on the podcast a lot. The idea of like winning at life if you're married versus like not winning if you're single. Right. So I thought it would be really cool to release a couple episodes around the larger topic of happiness, specifically as it relates to our dating lives. And that is where I was at when lo and behold, I met someone. Because, that's how the universe works. A friend of mine, I was having coffee with him in February, and he's like, Jeanette, I think there's something to say about the fact that you took a break from talking about being single and then you found somebody and you're suddenly not single again. And I'm like, it's really interesting to me. And I was like, I wonder if there's an episode around this. How can I use this for my podcast? And while I was contemplating that, and while I was trying to like get this woman from Yale on my podcast, spoiler, it didn't work. She's super busy. She's like, "Are you the New York Times?" No, okay. Yes, my dad got sick. It was very sudden, and he went to the hospital, and it turns out he had stage 4 lung cancer. So that put the family and myself into a tailspin, and obviously nothing mattered. The podcast didn't matter. Talking about dating didn't matter. And I found it really interesting that I was dating someone during this really difficult time. I feel like it was like I really do believe in divine gifts, and I feel like this person was sort of sent to me to weather the storm, just to have someone. My dad did pass away in May, and that was really difficult, obviously, understatement. Um, and then my birthday was the first weekend of June, and a week later, the boyfriend, I don't even know if I can call him that, he broke up with me. It was just like a lot. It was a lot. And then I went sort of into a tailspin of grief in June and July, as you can probably guess. And like, not only did the podcast not matter, like nothing mattered. Nothing mattered. And I felt like it never would again, if I'm going to be completely honest. I was like, what if I no longer care about anything I've been working on, you know? And what brought me back to myself um was a project. I got brought on to production manage a commercial, and it's a lot of work. And it didn't allow me to think about anything else. And I don't know, I found my connected to my passion again. So that was a long summary. I know that's not the question you asked, but it sort of it feeds into itself. Um, yeah, and so here we are. Here we are trying to move forward.
I mean, I'm just so sorry for
Thanks.
your
Thank you
loss,
for
for
saying
your
that.
losses. I know you're saying it's a long summary, but I actually think that you, like, really kind of undersold and, like, packed
Glossed
that
over.
all very neatly. Yeah, I don't know if I would exactly say that that is the long version. And I wanna ask kind of like I have a few different directions that, I wanna go, and, I am thinking I will move chronologically, if that
Yeah, yeah,
is
that's fine.
okay? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
That makes sense.
first, I wanna hear a little bit about, how you met this guy and kind of, like, the tenor of your relationship, if you're willing to share, and how that fit into your, conception of, like, your own identity, and like you were saying, everything you learned from being single, what that felt like it was kind of, like, teaching you about yourself. I would love to hear a little more about.
I love that question, and obviously, like, I've been talking about my dating life for as long as this podcast's been on the air, so, like I said, I believe in openness and honesty. I've asked the same of my guests, to share as much as they're willing to share, but everyone who listens know that I don't really have any boundaries, so I'm happy to share details about my love life. And also it's gonna help me process it, I think, a little bit too. Um, okay, so the story of how we met, I was at a party for this, I've never been able to explain who he is. He's not an influencer, but he's has multiple connections in multiple industries, and he has a huge mailing list, and he's able to throw these really big parties that bring, like, hundreds of people in from different industries, and what I love about that is, like, a lot of the parties I go to are, like, people in the entertainment industry, but I love when I go to these parties and, like, I meet people from different, universes and different worlds, and I think that's something that single women in New York struggle with, like, just dating. I mean, obviously, whoever you meet on the apps, but, like, people wanna be exposed to different circles. I think we kind of self-isolate a little bit and move in our own bubbles, and it's cool when you meet people that, like, do something that you've never heard of before. So, anyway, I'm just gonna get into it. This is a pretty
Get
amazing
into
thing.
it.
We're just gonna fucking do it. Here's the story, right? So at this party, this happened to be a birthday party for this guy. At this very same party last year, and we went home together, and it wasn't gonna be romantic. We weren't gonna date. I figured that out pretty quickly, but we sort of like hung out off and on, got cocktails together, slept together. I kind of cut it off after about 3 months. I was like, no more. But then I ran into him at a summer party. We reconnected. We went out for drinks in January and we went dancing and then we went home together. And then February is this birthday party. And I was like, oh, it's our meet-iversary. Are you going to this party? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to the party. And I'm like, okay, great. Should we go together? And he didn't he didn't respond. I was like, okay, well, I'll just meet you there. Whatever. It's fine. We're not a thing. So obviously, we're texting what time you're getting there, all this stuff, and 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes, that's not an exaggeration. I'm heading out the door and I get this text and he says, "Hey, do you have an extra ticket? I'm going to bring a date." And I was
Oh
like,
my god.
I mean, I know we're not together, but you and I have been talking about going to this party together where we met last year and, like, I'm gonna be there. And also just, like, what an idiot. I was like, "I'm free sex. Like, why would you bring another woman?" I don't know.
Right.
So, fortunately, I'm at the party and my friend Daniel happens to be there. I was like, "Thank God you saved me because if I was here by myself, it'd be so awkward."
Yeah.
And I'm carefully avoiding him all night, and, I see him, and he's got some blonde chick with him, and I'm like, "Oh my god, that's the fucking girl." And so, ignoring, we're on the dance floor, we being me and Daniel, he comes over to me, he's like, "Hi, hi, I wanna talk to you," and I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm here, you know where I am." And the next thing I see is him dragging her, they're holding hands, past me on the dance floor to the coat check. And I was like, "Oh, he knows I'm here. Like, you just crossed in front of me with that fucking girl and you're leaving with her." I was livid. I was livid. And I was like, "We're going to the bar. We're getting shots." And I'm at the bar and I am mouthing off. I was literally like you can see I'm still blatant
Yeah.
disrespect and idiocy, complete
Yeah.
idiocy.
Yeah, yeah.
"I've been sleeping with you for over a year. Why would you bring a date? Idiot. Idiot man."
Yeah.
Anyway, and it's crowded and whatever, it's New York. We all talk like no one can overhear us, even though people can overhear us all the time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And suddenly this guy turns to me. He's on my right. He turns and he just says, "Hello." And I was like, "Hi." And I was like, "Sorry that you heard everything." He's like, "No, no, it sounds terrible. I feel really bad for you." And he bought me a drink or whatever. Um, and my friend Daniel's really good at chatting with new people. And so we were both like, "What's your name? What industry do you work with? How do you know
Yeah.
John?" All this stuff like that. He's not on Instagram. So I was like, "All right, well, let me give you my number and we'll stay connected." Blah, blah. And then Daniel got drunk and I was there by myself. So I
Uh-huh.
was in like the back corner by the like leftovers at the party and this guy's there. And I was making fun of him because he was one of those guys that like gets a nice new shirt for the party, but forgets to like iron or steam out the packaging creases.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Stupid men. And
It's endearing.
and then we started dancing together and I feel a tap on my shoulder. And I turn around and it's the guy. And I'm like, what happened?" And he goes, "Oh, she had to go home."
Wait, it's the
I
first
was
guy?
yeah. Should we just
Oh
say his
my
name? Should we
god.
just shame him? His name was Jayish. So Jayish. Just for clarification between the two men, y'all. We're not here to shame people.
Yeah, exactly. It's just first
Um
names. Like, legally, you're not on the hook.
so I'm like, I just turned back to the new person I have met. And I did one of these things. I put my arm around him. I leaned super close to his ear. And I was like, this is the guy that I was talking about, you know? And then we both look back at him and then we just start dancing again together. And I was like, oh, it's the sweetest revenge. It was the
I was
sweetest
gonna say, you
revenge.
really won this night, just to be clear.
I felt really good. So the new guy, I wonder if I should use his name. He's never gonna find this. His name's Timur. So Timur goes to the bathroom and I get a tap on the shoulder. I don't know what the fucking thing is with the tapping. Tap, tap, tap. And I turn around, it's Jayish. And I was like, you're still
Still here.
here, you know? And also, were you standing there the entire time, like watching me dance with this guy, like waiting for him to go to the bathroom? It's so fucking creepy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't say anything. I just turned around and I walked away. And I did go home with Timur that night. And then it was Valentine's Day 2 days later, and I get a text from Jayish with a fucking rose, and he says, "Happy Valentine's Day. I hope you had fun at the party." I was like, "You stupid, stupid man. You lost your chance," you know? So he was gone, but he helped me meet Timur, which was great.
Wow.
And so, yeah, we went home together, and that never guarantees anything, but, Timur actually reached out and asked me out. He said, "I would like to take you out to dinner."
Very sweet.
Okay, I know. So we went out to dinner, and then we went out for drinks, and he was like, "I wanna see you again." I mean, he was just very straightforward, and I really
Yeah.
appreciated it. I mean, obviously, we had chemistry too, but, he was like, "When can I see you again?" Like, no beating around the bush. So yeah, so that is the crazy story of how we met, and considering how it ended, it probably the whole motherfucking thing is just, like, a little too Jeanette, you know what I mean? But it was a great story forever, you know, that was, like, people
Yeah.
wanted to know what happened with Jayish and then how I met this new guy, like, I mean, it's a pretty fucking great story.
Yeah. I mean, it totally is. The, like, meeting and it's all yeah, a
It's
lot of
like the story that
poetic
you tell over
justice.
over brunch that every
Yeah.
you know what I mean? You're like,
Completely.
"Hold on, I have the story to end all stories." It was a
Yeah.
good story for a very long time.
Totally. No, well, I love hearing it and, like, getting all of the color. I mean, I would love to hear a little bit more about Tamor, but I was just gonna say I'm kind of curious about what made him like, if this I don't know, the reasons you were first drawn to him, did those kind of, like, persist throughout your time seeing each other? What made him, like, a valuable option to, like, give up being single? And then also at what point during your seeing him did you find out that your dad was ill and kind of how that, like, functioned in your, like, intimate relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember ever thinking like, "Oh, I'm giving up being single," because I think one of the things I talk about on the podcast a lot, and one of the things that I wanna make clear is that, yeah, I'm very single from a feminist perspective, and I own that, and I'm happy being single, but I'm also dating, and I'm also looking for a partner, and I think those 2 things can exist at the same time.
Totally.
So, you know, considering that I was like actively going on dates, I'm going to like singles events, I'm, you know, kind of going to these parties and going home with people if the moment happens. Like there was never like a weird transition where I'm like, "Oh, I'm no longer who I thought I was," or there was a moment where I was like, after my friend Luke, who was pointed out, like, "I wonder if you met this person because you took this hiatus on the podcast." I started to get a little weird about it and woo-woo about it, and I was like, "Oh, you know, maybe that means that, like, the break from the podcast is meant to be," and
Yeah.
you know, like but I do believe in that, like, because you know, they always say the thing that you talk about and you think about and the thing that occupies your life is the
Yeah.
truth that you receive, you know? So I did think that there was some truth and some magic in that. Like, maybe I stopped having this be my sense of self and my brand and my universe, and I let
Yeah.
that go and someone came to me. Um I don't know if there's considering that, like, this person wasn't the be all end all, I don't know how much truth there is in that, but I did have to stop and think, "Why now?" Like, it's such an
Yeah.
interesting and I still think that, especially in the retrospect of being able to look back on my year and knowing that he was there through my dad's death, and having him break up with me like 3 weeks after my dad died, like, he very specifically was in my life for this small window of time, for a reason that I'm trying to grapple with, you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
And I also think that connection doesn't, go away. It's so disappointing that it ended on the note that it sounds like it ended on, but, like, that closeness still exists, even if it was
Yeah.
for that pocket of time.
Right, right.
Like, I think that I don't know. Yeah, and maybe you don't yeah, who knows what you're supposed to, like, learn from it, but I do think a lot of what you're saying is really interesting and salient, kind of about, like, the dangers of sort of self-mythology and kind
Yeah.
of, like, when you tie your identity to any one thing, you know, too extremely, how that can kind of limit you, and it sounds like you
Or
were
just manifest
broken out of
itself.
that. Yeah,
Like, they always say, like, the thing that you want, like, put it out into the universe, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Talk about it like it's real. And so if I'm constantly talking about being single, what if the universe is just mirroring that back to me?
yeah. Did the experience of your father getting sick build intimacy between you 2 at one point?
You would think so, and I think that's really when I realized that the relationship wasn't, like, 100% what I wanted or needed it to
Interesting.
be, because I think
Yeah,
with the right person, it would have.
yeah,
Um, he is, he's a citizen, but he wasn't born in this country, and I think that may have affected how he responded to me, culturally,
yeah,
um, and also just who he is, but, we just never really got to the place where we had, like, a deep, emotional intimacy and a deep bond. I just remember, like, we had a very uncomfortable day in April where it was the first day that my dad was brought to the hospital and was kept overnight. So you have to realize that there was a month of, like, I'm not feeling well, I'm getting tests done, what's the update? Da, da, da. We're waiting for the tests. We can't move forward, like all this stuff, right? Um, and I just remember, so it was the weekend that he was going to go into the hospital, and I was like very, very unanchored, obviously,
yeah,
freaking out. It's a lot of losing someone is a lot of what ifs, to be perfectly frank. That's like you just spend a lot of time, not even in the present moment, just like forecasting.
yeah,
Um, And so I would just remember I had a show in the morning with a company that I perform with and in his neighborhood. So, I'd stayed over the night before, and then we were just gonna like meet up and go get lunch. And we were walking down the street, and I said, I was like, I'm on my phone and I'm like, I hate when people are, you're one on one with someone and someone's on their phone. So I wanted to
yeah.
say, I'm really sorry. I'm waiting to hear the update. My dad's probably gonna go into the hospital this weekend. And And he just started asking questions. "Why is your dad going to the hospital? Do they know what's wrong with him? Do they know how long he's gonna stay?" Like, and that's not it didn't
What you
help.
needed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I mean, I was like, and I just stopped and I freaked out on the sidewalk and I was like, "I don't have the answers, obviously." Like, I'm asking myself the same questions, and I just started, I got myself worked up and I got upset. So I'm like I just remember we walk into the restaurant and I'm, like, visibly crying, and he's looking at the menu. And
oh
I was like,
god.
"Hey." And he was like, "What?" And I was like, "I'm crying." And he was like, "I know, I'm sorry, I made you mad." And I was like, "I I just need you to hug me. I just
Yeah,
need you to hug me." Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just
it's
need you
yeah.
to
When
like, and the
someone
fact
doesn't
that I've
know how to care for you in a moment like that, it's so intense.
I mean, that showed me everything. I was like, "The fact that I have
Yeah,
to ask for that is really annoying. The fact that you saw this moment of me being, like, scared of losing my dad as something that was, like, a judgment on you, um, God, it was just like, wrong.
yeah,
It was just
yeah,
wrong, and I was like, "This person will never understand me, and this person is not the person that can partner with me going forward."
yeah,
That was hard to learn, but
yeah,
here's the super complicated thing. I was in no position to, like, end that, and so,
of course.
as little as he gave me, I needed that 20%. You know what I mean? I just needed to have
Yeah,
someone to text and call, and even if I didn't ask for a hug, I was. I ended up getting a hug, and it was better to not be alone during that
Yeah,
time.
that
Um,
makes sense. And to also when you're in that, like, position, the idea of you then, like, taking on the burden of ending something and, like, suffering, like, another
it's too much.
loss at your own hands,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah, it's
know
too
who
much.
would be capable of doing that. Yeah, absolutely.
And so I thought at some point I was like, "Oh my god, like, my grief is now married with this very complicated relationship." You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah,
was like, "This is a really weird knot. I don't know how to get out of it. I'm dependent on it, and then at the same time, like, it's not right." I don't know. It was just such a strange time.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for talking about it.
Well,
I
thanks
know
for
it must be, like,
listening. And
intense to revisit.
no, it's here's something that I say to everyone because my emotions are present because I'm still grieving, obviously. Like
Yeah,
I'm a functional human being. I'm not depressed. I go to work. I'm okay. I can laugh. I go dancing. But I'm not going to pretend that I'm not feeling what I feel. And I'm not going to apologize for it because I think we have such a weird position around grief as a culture in this country. No one knows how to handle it. No one knows what to say. And you're supposed to hide it and
yeah,
pretend that you're fine, and that's really stupid. Um,
yeah,
and so when people are like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry I made you sad," I'm like, "That's ridiculous." Like, I'm already sad.
yeah,
And it it's I've heard this from other people who are grieving too, like, it's nice to talk about it with someone else. It's nice to have someone listen and be like, I see you.
yeah,
I see your grief. I hold your emotion and your whatever you're feeling right now. I
yeah,
honor that and not get weirded out by it. So
totally.
when things come up for me, I'm very much like I'm an actor and
Yeah,
I cry very easily all the time, and it's not embarrassing to me because one of my mentors told me, she's like, tears are blessings because they remind us what's important to us. So never
yeah, that's
apologize. That's
beautiful.
the superpower of women.
Yeah.
Um anyway, all that is to say, thanks for asking and thanks for listening.
Well, I'm glad you yeah, no, I'm glad you said it, and yeah, I want you to be able to cry. I am not afraid. Yeah, and allowing the grief to kind of, like, exist alongside everything else. I think
Yeah.
there's, like, a false sense of a timeline in my experience of grief.
100%.
People are like, "Well, you're grieving now, and then it's something else," and it's just kind of, like, everything at once, and I will say, like, we're recording this on November 14th, like, this is unbelievably, like, cosmically recent for you. Like, not much time has passed. Not that, not that, like, time will,
Right.
um, I don't know. Not that that has to hinder your experience in any way, but I don't know. I feel like I know that we're kind of structuring this episode as if we're, like, looking back, but maybe you're still, like, in it and, like, I don't know, kind of looking at it from inside of it.
Yeah. I think that's true. I think it's gonna sort of always be there. And I mean, one of the reasons that this episode is titled Dating in the Wake of Loss is because, you know, I recently decided to join the apps again, for better for worse.
Okay.
I have yet to go on a date. When I say apps, I just mean one because I hate all of them except for Hinge. So
Yeah.
I've been back on Hinge. Um, but it's gonna be something that I have to navigate and figure out. Um,
Yeah.
I did actually I met someone in real life, and dated him for about, um, it was like 5 weeks. I wish it was longer, but it, didn't work. Um,
When
and,
was this, can I ask?
oh yeah, this was, I think it was September. I think it was September, but I'd gone to see an Oppenheimer.
It's totally a point of reference. Yeah, I can
I
place
think I
it.
saw Oppenheimer Labor Day weekend. I think that's ringing bells for me. I'm not quite sure. I went by myself because everyone had seen it already, and I went and got a drink at a bar afterwards. And I usually just sit at the bar and get a glass of wine and read my book, and someone sat down next to me and started talking to me. And that never works. It never works for all
It
my
is fu
years of drinking a glass of wine and reading a book, like,
I've done
literally
it,
not a
yeah.
single person has ever talked to me.
Y
Anyway, I bring him up only just to say that, like, it was constantly in my mind when to, like, bring up the fact that, like, my dad had recently died, and
Yeah,
I was like, I don't know, I was kinda hoping it would come up organically, but that's not the kind of thing that comes up organically, and
yeah,
it's gonna be something going forward that I'm gonna have to talk about, like, even let's say I went on a date tomorrow and they were like, "What are you doing for the holidays?" Like, then you or, like, "Where do your parents live?" It's
yeah,
gonna be something that comes up, but, like, here's the thing, I'm 43, and I just think that this is what all of us are navigating and going to be navigating in this time
yeah,
of life. I have 3 really close friends, and at least 20 people reached out to me and were
yeah,
like, "I lost someone in the last year, I lost a parent," or whatever. Like, it's so many people. And again, going back to my earlier point, like, I didn't know. I mean, you know what I mean? We just don't talk about it actively. We talk about it at the time that it happens. Then it just sort of fades into, like, the background of our lives. Um, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because we have to figure out a way to move forward.
yeah,
But I also, I don't know, it's gonna be a new journey for me to figure out how that fits into dating.
yeah, definitely. Um, did it end up fitting into this relationship at all? I know you said you
The
were kind of
5-week
like
thing?
the 5-week thing.
I love that you
Yeah.
call it a relationship. Um, like, it came up, I don't even remember the context in which it came up. I told him, but then I sort of glossed over it and we moved on.
Yeah,
He sort of did the thing, "I'm sorry," and then you're like, "Okay." Um,
yeah,
yeah, I don't really and it wasn't long enough to talk more deeply about it, I think.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So what, made you want to get back on the apps? And I would like to hear how long you were off of them and what your decision to get off had been
Yeah.
previously.
Well, I went off the apps when I met Timur, and I felt like it was definitely like he and I had both expressed verbally that we were like we were I think he was 40, so we were both like at an age where we were looking for something serious and that we both had very serious intentions about the other person. And so there was no reason for me to keep dating. I didn't
Yeah,
delete my apps.
totally.
I just, there's a you can pause it. You can say pause my account.
Yeah,
So I pause it. And to go back on them, I think meeting Kevin helped me realize that I can date and that I would like to
yeah,
date. It was really, really nice to meet someone in person and have that work. It was another great story for a minute.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
remains a great story, I'll say.
it was also just like our first date was one of the best first dates I've ever had in my life.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
we we went to Swingers, which is a mini golf club that has a lot of drinks. It's a
I
really
was
great.
there recently,
Were
funny
you?
enough, yeah.
We went
For a work we were for a Halloween,
Okay. Oh my god, there
mini
were so
golf,
many, like
but
yeah,
not
there
a
were a
date.
lot of
Yeah, yeah,
work
yeah.
there, which I found really funny.
And it's, like, underground, the whole place, you are kind of in a different world, so yes, I can totally picture it.
And they hated us. They hated us because we were kissing and holding up the line, and I was like, "I would
Oh, good
motherfucking
for
hate us
you.
too. We're annoying." Um, but also, it was one of those New York moments where I got out of the subway and it was pouring, like one of those, like, late summer pouring days, and I hadn't brought an umbrella because it was a 5-minute walk to the place.
Yeah,
And so we're texting, and I'm like, I'm waiting in the subway alcove. I think I'm gonna try to wait a moment. And he was like, I have a big umbrella, like one of those nasty New York umbrellas that people, those golf umbrellas
yeah,
that
the,
that
like, violently large, yeah,
yeah,
totally.
yeah, yeah. Like, I'm like, okay. It was so he came and he picked me up. He's like, let me know where you are. And I was like, oh my God. He like picked me up. It was the first time in my life that I've been picked up at my subway station. And um I was very touched by the chivalry and
Yeah,
the gentleman offer. And I was like I posted about it on Facebook and everyone was like, "Oh my god, this guy, we love him,"
yeah, totally.
So It went really well. And so, yeah, I think that that woke something up in me and activated me, which is probably the better way than if I'd been sitting around being like, "All right, I guess I should be back on the apps again." You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So we are grateful to Kevin too for coming into my life at the right time and showing me that I am I can date while grieving and that I'm okay. I wasn't like a mess of tears and bawling and we had a
Yeah,
great time and both things can be true. Again, you can
yeah,
be grieving and you can also be smitten and
yeah,
excited about someone and flirting and sexy and dirty at the same time and
yeah.
then cry at night, It's we're complex human beings and everything is active.
It's very beautifully put. Um, yeah, I think that's right. Like the carrot, not the stick, drawing you back into the dating world is,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think, like a nice way to do it. Um, and so again, not that time exists right now, even though I'm forcing us to move chronologically. What has made you want to get back into the podcast, and what has kind of, like, put you in a position where you feel, like, ready to dive back into this? And maybe you can also talk about some of your trepidations to have done the podcast in over the past, whatever, 8 months.
I mean, I'm just gonna be honest, like, I wish it was some altruistic kind of beautiful story, like, that ties in the guys that I dated this year and my dad, but, nope. I just I had good old-fashioned guilt, by the fact that I
Yeah,
had as I mentioned, like, I had episodes that I previously recorded, on the science of well-being and on happiness and on taking a break as a woman, um, by some people I really respect and, never got their podcast episodes out, and I felt really bad that these people had given me their time and, um, said yes to me, and we had beautiful conversations, and I never did anything with them, so I feel I owe it to them, to share their words and their thoughts, um, and I was hung up with by the fact that I was like, "I don't know, this is" there was already a departure, and it was something different, so how do I come back with these different episodes if people are expecting like a one-on-one fun single
yeah,
conversation? Um, which is, and that brought me in to bringing someone else. I think one of the most powerful things that we can do as women is it's to know when you need help and to be able to ask for it in a strong way. Knowing that asking for help doesn't come from a place of weakness, that it's empowering to acknowledge where you are and acknowledge what you need and be able to have the vulnerability to put the ask out, you know, for assistance. And so I was like, I just had this moment where I was sitting, I had nothing to do all day. I'd clear my calendar. I'm like, I'm working on the podcast. And I was like, I don't want to do the podcast today. I'm like, what
yeah,
is wrong with me? I have no excuses. And I'm like, I don't think I can do this on my own anymore. And I can do
yeah,
it on my own. I've been doing it on my own forever, but um this year's been a lot. And if at any moment I'm like, I don't feel like I have the strength to do anything on my own, then I know and I've been shown by my friends in my community that like if I need anything to just say so. I've been very, very touched and very honored by the love that was shown to me this year and the way that people took care of me and my family. And so I want to remember how to keep that with me and, pay it forward also,
yeah,
and just never take that for granted, that that compassion and that grace, you know?
definitely. Yeah,
So, so I have these episodes that I recorded earlier this year. They don't address what's happening in my life now, but I think they're still really relevant. I think they're kinda evergreen in that they talk about the idea of, like, taking a break as a woman, taking a step back from something. And The Science of Wellbeing, found this incredible author and scientist who talks about how we can actively rewire our brain, our neural pathways to train our brain towards happiness. I think that's so cool. And I brought on an incredible dating coach and psychologist to just talk about like approaching dating with joy. So I love these topics. I think obviously maybe they do come back around at the end of the day because my year has been quite full of sadness. And I've taken a break. So maybe it's relevant, s- you know.
Totally.
And to your final question, I don't know if there will be new episodes. I'm sort of reassessing everything in my life, including the podcast. Obviously, I'm once again #single. Um, you know, but this year has made me question a lot of things and asked me, like, do I want to keep having these conversations? What are they contributing to my life? What are they contributing to other people's lives? So I think I'm gonna publish these new episodes with your help, and then
Yeah.
these new old episodes, and then we'll see, where we are. Um, but I thought it was important to have this little like fireside chat to be honest and acknowledge like where I went and why. And also because I don't doubt that other people are probably at some point in their lives, if not now, going through the same thing.
Definitely. No, I think it is. I mean, it's crazy that such a profound and, like, intense experience can be so universal, but I guess, like, as with all the most, like, intense parts of life, they are.
100%. Yeah. I mean that's literally what this podcast has shown me.
Yeah.
In and the more specific people get with their dating lives, the more people like, "Oh my god, it's me." And
Yeah, totally.
I it's brought me great joy. I'm like, I love it because I really feel like, "Oh, we're not in this alone." Like it feels like we're in this alone. We're in this like like everyone's partnered but us.
Yeah.
And no, these experiences, and I think especially now as women are really coming into their power, and I say coming in because I do not think we are there yet, but like
Yeah.
admitting what we want, acknowledging we're not unhappy, making choices that prioritize ourselves and our independence. Like there's a reason why divorce rate is so high because
Yeah.
I think a lot of women are like, fuck this shit, and they're
Yeah.
walking out on partners that don't treat them well, whether like emotionally or physically, um, and are finding ways to go it alone. Not that they haven't always forever, but I think women are giving themselves more permission than previously. Um,
Yeah.
and I love that.
Yeah, totally. I think that encapsulates it beautifully, and I also think that, as with any creative product, like, your heart has to be in it, and I think people can tell if it's not, and so I
Yeah,
feel like you've
yeah.
come back to this in a way that is, like, so kind of honest and, like, commendable, and I don't know, I think that that will, like, shine through. And I also look forward to listening back to these episodes with you and, I don't know, kind of like the perspective shift, and I have, like, no doubt that they will be, like, valuable, um, in new ways.
I hadn't thought about that. I wonder if yeah,
I mean,
I
we'll
would be
see,
so
but we can
interested to see if the
we
podcast will, like, retroactively teach me something that I need. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like
completely.
I've, like, time traveled. Like, I made these
Yeah.
episodes for future Jeanette to listen to and to take solace in. That's super
I
weird, but you
I
get me.
do, but no, I'm so with you. I mean, I also get into, like, the woo-woo stuff very easily, but it sounds like, as with a lot of things this year for you, like, whether it was, like, the timing of Timur at, like, the party, and having the other guy there, to dating him, to this other guy to Kevin, who you dated for 5 weeks a couple months ago. It sounds like, I don't know, these people and these experiences have kind of come into your life at a certain time for a reason, and so, I don't know, I look forward to seeing kind of what that is with the rest of the podcast, #single.
I really like that reframe. Thank you. I was feeling, like I said, a lot of guilt around it and negative emotions of like, "Oh, I'm a bad podcaster and I'm a bad producer and I've
No,
abandoned my baby." And, I like the reframe of being like, "No, it wasn't time yet. And
it
now
wasn't,
now it's
and I
time."
And it feels the same with dating. Like, let's come at it from a place of kind of like joy and curiosity and not like self-punishment. I don't know.
Yeah, and acknowledge it's okay that, like, sometimes the timing is not right. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And, like or dating someone, the timing is not right, and you're like, "Now is not the right time."
Yeah. And
And
it's
I think
worse to force it always, I
God,
think.
always. Yes, yes. Well, thank you for this retrospective kind of look back at my year, which has been a lot to grapple with on my own, and
Yeah.
it's been very helpful and cathartic and beautiful to have this conversation with another human being, and in the framework of hashtag single and the podcast and just being a single woman or just being a human, I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. Thank
I
you.
mean,
It's felt good.
I know it sounds corny, but thank you for your openness. This was like really beautiful to hear and valuable for me.
Thanks,
And
Emma.
yeah, I feel more excited to, yeah, kind of like dive into things.
Awesome. Well, I guess this is the moment where we thank you as well for listening. Thanks for hanging in. I know this was an unusual episode, and maybe we're talking about topics that you were not expecting to hear, I'm sure. But and like I said, if you are a long-term listener, I'm exceptionally grateful that you stuck with us and that you came back. And if this is a random episode that you found through things you might like, surprise! Some of our previous episodes are a little more fun. You can go back and listen to them. But regardless, whether if you are new to the podcast or if you are an old fan, I hope you found at least a little seedling of something that you could take with you and take forward into the end of 2023. We would love to hear from you if you're interested in sharing your thoughts. Obviously, you can find us over at hashtag singlepod on Instagram or just shout us a comment in whatever platform you're listening to. We'd love to hear from you. So I will just sign off as always. That's it for this episode. We will catch you next time.